Hi, this is Sheena.
And this is Jonathan.
And this is Abandoned Ship, a sci-fi podcast about Deep Space Nine.
Yes, and today we are on episode 13 of season 1, Battle Lines.
Definitely up from last week.
Yeah, I thought so too. I'm like, this isn't too bad.
I thought it was mid, but maybe it was because after last week, I actually remember this episode.
Yeah, there's a lot of cliches in here and some unearned moments, but it just felt
like we were at least trying to go for like a classic Star Trek episode.
Felt more Deep Space Nine.
Also, this has major bearings.
Yes, that's probably why, because we're getting into some of the setting up events to come.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm trying to phrase this in a way because it's hard to compliment it because it's like, well, it's kind of cliche and derivative, and most of it does not come back in later, but
one key element though does, and I do have to give it props that it was a very focused episode too, which I feels like helps a lot. Back and forth. I don't even think there was a B plot because even the slight B plot related back to our main plot.
Yeah, what was the B plot?
I mean, I just consider that Dax and Miles just trying to find them.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's the only thing I would consider kind of like a side
would
plot.
You call that a B plot? It's more just like, yeah.
1.5, like it's not even like a full step over. It's just a baby step. I guess we can get right into it. So we have our cold opening. We're in Sisko's office. We're pretty much coming in like in the middle of a conversation where, not sure who found it, but they found the old files from the last Cardassian prefect.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the leader's name? Okay. And so it's Sisko, Dax, and Miles, and they're looking at one on Kira. And they're like, should we tell her about this? And of course, as they're saying this, Kira comes in, and she's like, about what?
Yeah, they talk about that these files were like encrypted, but like made so obvious that they feel like they wanted them to find them. So you get like, are they trying to mess with Kira by planting this information about her?
By prefect leader, do they mean Ducat?
I can't remember if he was called the prefect or not. Or if there was another guy who was the prefect.
Wasn't he the head of the station before?
Yes.
Sisko? It's just weird that if it is Ducat, they wouldn't just say Ducat.
Yeah, this is, my nerd brain is failing me at this moment, and I cannot remember exactly.
You're going to do a Google search? Uh-oh. Deep dive like
take too long to figure out. I'll just yeah.
Okay, well, while you're doing that, Kira comes in and they're like, I mean, you really want to read this file about you? And she's like, I'm not a child, I can take it. So everybody pretty much leaves Sisko's office, probably because they know Kira's reaction won't be positive. They get out of Dodge. As Sisko is leaving his office...
It is Ducat.
Oh!
Yeah, he was the prefect.
Why did they just say Ducat?
Yeah, that's the only thing that threw me, is I'm not sure why they wouldn't have just said his name, but...
Whatever.
I don't know if they've called him the prefect yet. Maybe they have. Maybe that's later, so then they weren't intending on connecting it here. That's why they didn't say his name.
Yeah, maybe it was one of those question mark things that they weren't sure about at the moment.
All right, that's enough of that. Where were we?
So, like I said, as Sisko is leaving his office, he gets a call from Bashir. Apparently, Bashir was just moseying about and turned a corner and ran into the guy.
They were unloading medical supplies from Bajor.
So was she on the transport?
Yeah, that's the thing. Is
she
like,
was just sitting with the medical supplies. Okay.
Well, I assume not like a stowaway.
I mean, that's what it sounds like.
You opened a box and there's the Kai in it. I'm like, holy, what the hell?
I mean, the way Bashir said it, I'm like, where was she?
I interpret it as she was making like an unannounced trip. Like she just sort of took passage on this transport so she wouldn't attract attention. Just sort of snuck on, basically.
I want to believe she was in like
In a box.
Holes drilled into it.
Yes, the breathing holes.
Fragile written on the side. And Cisco's like, okay, I'm coming. And that's where we hear Kira scream from Cisco's office, minor operative. So she's upset that apparently they dissed her in the files and called her insignificant.
Limited to running errands. Yes, that
Ducat
definitely feels like
got the last laugh again.
It's interesting. I took it as it was the files of a bunch of like terrorist, quote unquote, terrorist activities. And so I think it was twofold. One, they wanted to like lead the stuff there to show the Federation, hey, look at all this bad stuff they did. Oh my God, they killed all these people. To like try and put a wedge in there. And then Ducat, that felt like the Cardassian plan, and Ducat's personal touch was trying to sneak in this file on Kira.
Because he knew Kira was still going to be.
Would he have known that she would have been there when they left?
I don't know.
Who knows?
That's my headcanon.
We'll stick with it.
Cisco meets up with the Kai. It's like, hey, what you doing here? And the Kai's like, well, you told me you would give me a tour of the station, and I'm here for my tour. So they start.
I'm sorry, that coupon has expired. You're gonna have to pay full price.
You need to do a prior reservation.
Yeah, we're booked today.
Mm-hmm. So Cisco's like, sure, let's go on our tour. And with them is Bashir, and Kira's trailing behind. Because Kira got out of her funk by Cisco telling her the Kai was there. And she's like, huh? What?
She's talked about the Kai before. Like,
yes.
How big a deal she is, how big a deal she is to her personally.
Yes.
When Cisco first met her in The Emissary, she was all starstruck then, like, what? You get to meet the Kai? So there's some of that that's been set up. A lot of this episode does depend on you very specifically remembering a lot of that, though.
Yes.
Because they really skip to the end in terms of some of her like development with that relationship and what the Kai means. So they don't restate a lot of it.
Yes. And I think they do a good job in the beginning showing how much she means to Kira. Yeah. It's hard to stop Kira in the middle of a a train.
There's a moment that comes later when we get to it. I'll talk about that. I feel like wasn't quite earned, which makes
There's a couple of moments in this. Flat. Yeah. I wish we had gotten one episode with the Kai before we got to this episode. Like, I know she's not the most compelling character, and it doesn't mean she had to be like throughout the whole thing or the main character, but just something else.
'Cause I'm pretty sure the last time we saw her was the pilot.
Yeah, we haven't seen her since the pilot. So they're doing this tour. I believe it is Bashir that notes the Kai seems occupied, and she does. As they're doing this tour, she definitely looks, she's in deep thought. They look out one of the windows, and Cisco's like, oh, fancy you stopped here. The wormhole is right there. But sadly, we don't have any ships that are going to go through today, so we can only see it when like a ship is going in and out. She gives him that look, and Cisco's like, I guess we could take a runabout and we can go through the wormhole, which is meaningful to her. Like, it's not a small thing, because this is her religion. Like, the wormhole is pretty much the home of her gods.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, yes, I would understand why they're just going to do this trip for her.
Yep.
To go through the wormhole. Of course, Kira's going to come. And then Bashir is lurking behind them going, you got a place for a doctor?
Can I go? Please.
Even
Are we going for a walk? We're going for a walk. Yes. We're going for a walk.
And Cisco's like, aren't you busy? You're the only doctor here. And he's like, no.
And good thing he came too, or they'd have been screwed.
Oh, yes. They go on their little runabout. Oh, this is interesting. I don't know if this comes back at all later. I feel like it does. But before they get on the runabout, the Kai talks to Miles and says, you have a daughter, right? And Miles' like, yes, a little girl. And she takes off a necklace and gives it to him and says, can you please give this to your daughter? And Miles is like, sure.
I think it's showing that she knows she's not coming back. So she's giving away her things.
Okay. I just didn't know if that necklace ever
No,
showed back up.
Not that I know.
Okay. So it's just I'm parting with gifts. Okay, gotcha. We have our credits. We come back. We're in the runabout, and they're going through the wormhole. And I thought it was a nice touch after they go through it that you see the Kai has like a tear running down her cheek.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's like, you tell she's very taken with the experience.
But she's doing like these ominous sayings, and everybody's like, okay. She's like, and she goes, is that it? We're already going back? And this guy's like, yeah, that's it.
And nothing else to see.
And right when they're about to pop a Yui and go back into the wormhole, they get, is it a request? Some kind of signal?
Just a random signal.
Okay.
Yeah. That I guess has not been broadcast up until this time. Otherwise, other ships would have spotted it. So, and I think they established later, because when the rescue party comes, they don't see it either. They have to follow their wake. So it was like, I think when they go up there, they said there was a damaged satellite, and the other ones were trying to repair it. So they're sending these signals. So I think it is literally like, this goes on with the whole like fate.
This
it
moment.
Was like
it
this
was only,
exact. If they weren't here at this exact moment, they would not have seen it.
Mm-hmm. And Sisko's like, we should just forget about it.
We'll send a probe.
We'll send a probe. And the Kai's like, if I wasn't here, would you go to look at this? Sisko's like, oh, yeah, we would. He's like, well, pretend I'm not here.
I don't get out often.
And go check it out. They're like, oh, okay.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, what could go wrong? You just have the most important religious leader of Bajor on your ship. But
How about sending a probe back through the wormhole to tell them, hey, this is where we've gone? They do this a lot. And I guess it's always just to set up the plot.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of situations that could have been avoided by leaving a message.
Oh, yeah, you're right. They could have sent something back.
Or deployed a little buoy to like, hey, this is where we've gone.
You're right.
This is just a Star Trek thing, though. But definitely,
yes.
Every time you see it, it's like, you guys should know better. You got to tell someone where you're going if you're deviating from your flight plan.
Especially by this point in time in the Federation, I feel like it should be all it had.
The episode must happen.
Yes. Because they see, is it the moon of this planet that has all these satellites?
There's a system, there's a bunch of planets in it, and a bunch of moons, and there's one particular moon
that has this like satellite system around it, and they could also tell there is humanoid life on this moon, but not much more than that because they can't get through the system. They're fixing one of the satellites, and I guess they tried to probe a little deeper, and the satellite system didn't like that and starts firing on them. Whoopsie doopsie, they crash on the planet, and they get off the runabout. They're literally pulling out the Kai's body. And holy shit, did they just kill the guy? That's my question.
Yep.
Like,
they JD Vanced her. Shit. Killed the Pope.
So at this point, we just do a quick scene over to Ops where they've noted that the runabout hasn't come back, and it's like way past the time they said they would be. And now I guess the dignitaries and other religious people are like, where's our Kai? We need answers. And Odo's like, they're freaking out. And so Miles and Dax like, I guess we just need to take a runabout and go check out things ourselves. Bye.
This is a small little scene, but actually I really liked it for a few different reasons. It makes the world feel sort of realistic and lived in, that they could have easily just done, hey, we haven't heard from them in a while. Let's go check it out. They should have reported back by now. Been very sort of standard. But having this external pressure of Bajor being panicked about this, which makes sense, like it all naturally
the
flows.
Pope has gone missing.
Yes. and Odo being like their conduit to Bajor, so he's very and pressuring them. And the way that the scene was shot was really neat. Like as they're going down the elevator, you get a shot looking up at him as it sort of closes, which was more cinematic than we're used to so far in Deep
Yes.
Space Nine. Like so far, it's sort of shot very flat. So that was just a nice little touches there.
Yes.
So that made it stand out to me as an episode. So that's one of the pluses to it.
Plus, okay.
Aside from the main plot being kind of standard, there's some some neat stuff in here.
There's some elements that work.
Yeah, no distracting melted face person.
That helps.
Yeah.
All right, so we go back to the moon planet, whatever it is, and what the Mad Max Fury Road is going on here? These outfits.
Hey, it could have been worse. It could have been the pirates, we keep saying.
Someone definitely was inspired by Mad Max. And later we see their anime, and they must have had a double feature where they watched like Mad Max and Return of the Jedi, because the other people look like they were straight off of the Endor's moon.
Which also is a moon.
It's a moon. They came right from the Resistance and ended up on this
some
moon.
pretty goofy
I'm like,
looking helmets.
what the heck? Why?
What the hell?
It's interesting because Star Trek is its own thing, but moments like this, it is not in a vacuum. It is
sure, yeah.
Other sci-fi makes impressions. Like it's like with this costuming, and we've seen other things where I'm like, oh, I feel like that was a note from something else.
Right.
So Star Trek is not immune to that. What I'm talking about with Mad Max Fury Road is they run into this group of people that just came from the Thunderdome.
Yes.
And they're head up by, what's the actor's name?
Jonathan Banks.
Who is the great grumpy villain of Breaking Bad. I love this guy. He's great in Breaking Bad. And he has this epic wig. It's like long hair, but like bald on the top.
It's like it's been burned off.
Yeah, because like some of his face looks a bit burnt, and it's fun. So they're giving a little bit of information of like what's going on. They're definitely in the middle of some war that's happening on this moon. What do they call themselves? The others were the Voles or something like that.
The Knoll. These are the Ennis.
Ennis and Knowles. Okay.
And they, two sides, and they hate each other. And no one understands how the war began. They just are too used to it. This is the very cliched part where it's like the two sides that can't get along. Yeah. Very, very typical plot.
It is a typical plot. I do think there is an interesting spin to it that I didn't give it credit before.
Okay.
Once they got into the episode, I'm like, oh, I remember this. Like when we got to the two sides. And I think when we learn about the punishment and then the end, I'm like, oh, I actually think this was an interesting twist to this very standard fantasy sci-fi plot. Yeah.
And to their credit, they don't try and give it the fairy tale ending. That is always so unbelievable.
It all out. Yeah. We're all come together.
Characters come in 15 minutes later, get this age.
We've just been battling for like 1,000 years.
To end. It's like, okay. But yeah.
While they're explaining this, Kira goes, my shoulder. I guess she remembered her shoulder hurts. Bashir goes into tough boy mode where he's like, I need my medical supplies. Give me my medical supplies. And he tries to get
I'm a doctor.
I'm a doctor.
I don't understand why you wouldn't care about a doctor.
Tough boy Bashir. I don't know. My notes are just like little bits of information that we get. So pretty much
they get a big
a lot happens in this
dump here where they set up how the Ennis and the Knoll, they were sentenced here.
Because this is pretty much
like a prison.
Yeah, this is a penal colony where they were sent here by their people because they were fighting each other and they refused to end this war. And I guess there was enough people that had enough of their shit. And they're like, okay, if you want to fight, you can go fight forever on the moon. And at first, it seems like such... like the punishment is way beyond like what they did. But the thing is, they still haven't learned their lesson. So is it?
Yeah, I mean,
And that's where the ending left me. It's like, because at first I'm like, whoa, like this is a huge punishment for their crime. This is way too much. But maybe their people saw something in them. They have the means to end it over and over. They choose not to. And I think they're just in a purgatory of it won't end until they can come to that realization. And that ending it's a sad ending.
yep. All right, well, for now, so yeah, they talk about how, they have no doctors, and they're like, that's weird.
Kira talks a little bit to, I believe, Bashir about the Kai. That the Kai was a symbol of hope for her. And now she died this meaningless death on like a random moon on a prison. She's like, I don't understand.
Oh, yes. Oh, hell.
Like a person that has so much meaning to me, how their death seems so meaningless.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, that's the struggle. And so she's just like in a thou mode. So
And we passed the scene I was talking about where when they find out she's dead and she bursts into tears, Kira.
oh yes, like sorrow.
Yeah, it did impact me, although I almost immediately was like, this seems a bit much based on what's been established. I kind of wanted to feel a little more of her point of view. I had the head knowledge,
Yes,
but I think, like what we're talking about with it being great, it would have been great if there was another episode with the Kai, especially if they could have met, because I don't think they met in that in Emissary. I don't think they had a scene together.
I don't think they did either.
So we're relying purely on like head knowledge of, yes, we understand that she's important to Bajor. Yes, we understand she's important to Kira. But because I wasn't shown that, I didn't get that emotional attachment. So seeing her be so distraught, she really took it to 11. That was one of the couple Kira moments in this that was nice, but just felt slightly unearned with how quickly this has progressed.
You're right.
Given that this is really only her second episode.
We need another episode, and we're like, Kira goes to Bajor because they said she never leaves. So Kira goes to Bajor, and for some reason or another, she runs into the Kai. And even if they just had one conversation, that could have set up this emotional bond that Kira has.
Maybe if they had more of that in this episode, even, I don't know what you would have cut.
Yeah.
There's a lot of exposition with the penal colony and the two sides that maybe
could have trimmed some of that down.
I think they could have focused more on Kira, make it a Kira story rather than a...
True, this is definitely more of a the battle.
If anything, this is the B plot, is Kira's journey.
You're right.
But because it's in the middle of Sisko's story, which is him trying to negotiate this peace, it falls to the sidelines a bit. So every time it comes up suddenly with so much emotion.
Yes. Especially since her death has such an impact on future events.
And they've done a better job of this in the future with Kira episodes. And so one's coming up, Duet, and that's a character who was introduced that episode.
Yes.
And yet, by the end, you feel that emotional attachment because it was her story. So I think what would have made this better, and maybe not just a mid-episode, but like a good episode, was if it was a Kira story, and her B-plot was the main plot.
And the B-plot was more this battle.
I mean, that's a fine... Like I said, the point that you made about the two sides and how sad that is, that could have all still been there. Mm-hmm. They could have probably spent a little less time in the exposition and just, I don't know, just don't have Sisko there. Have Kira be the one who has to do this.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Maybe Sisko gets injured or something, but have it be a Kira story. But they were trying to piggyback Kira's story on Sisko's story, and that's why every time these emotional moments happen, I'm just like, okay, that's something, but it didn't resonate. Gotcha. I didn't buy into it as much as I thought they wanted me to.
So as she's talking, this is where the enemy comes from, Endor's moon to come attack them. They have a little back and forth. Is this where Kira does her dive?
Yes.
I did the correct rep. She goes right into fight mode.
Yep.
She grabs a phaser and goes shoo across the cave and blasts the enemy. Man, she goes right back into it. Which is
the first time we see her like show off these skills that she allegedly has, being in the resistance.
Which is tied into her and the Kai plot is Kira's past. You're right. We should have given this way more attention.
Yep.
So in the aftermath of this little back and forth, who should appear but Ghost Kai? But oh no.
Dun dun dun.
She's no Ghost Kai. She's a zombie. She came back from the dead. So Bashir does a little scanny, and her physiology has completely changed. And there's some kind of biomechanical thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a part of her now. Details. Just that it is the Kai, but she's different.
Happened.
Yeah.
And they don't know what it is, what the consequences of that are.
And then she's saying this, everybody who just got dead during the skirmish are coming back to life. Zombies everywhere. You get a life. We do just a quick cutscene to the runabout. Most of the cutscenes to the runabout is just Miles and Dax trying to figure out where the heck Cisco and Co are and where they went. And they're just like, oh gosh, where do we even start? Go back to our cave on the moon. Oh, and this is where we get the explanation from the leader about their punishment, why they were sent here. They're pretty much an example. This is what happens when you go to war. No end goal.
Yep.
And so Cisco, it's like, why do you fight then? Like, if you guys are literally dying and coming back to life, what's the point? And Leo's like, vengeance. But he also says, it's interesting, he does mention something, he does understand this existence is pointless, but yet he's so fueled by vengeance. He like pushes that aside, his existence being pretty much pointless.
Yep. Because ultimately he blames it all on the Null. Yes, this is pointless. Yes, we're stuck in this stupid war, but it's all the Null's fault.
And as he's describing this and the battle and everything, Kira comes in hot. She is full throttle 100. Why didn't you do this? Why? You didn't have a guard there? You could have had a guard there. And while she's like bulldozing over Cisco, because Cisco's trying to yell at her, calm her down, like, whoa, this is not the time for this. Like, stop. And then Kai even says something, and she goes, this is not your fight. And Kira finally kind of comes down a bit. She's still pretty hot, but she's coming off the high of the adrenaline.
Yeah, and he points out, we used to do all those things, but once the fear of death is gone, things change, and
why have a lookout?
Yeah.
So what if they shoot me? I'll come back.
Who cares?
So Cisco's like, yo boy, and convinces the leader to talk to the other side and convince the other leader to talk to them, because he's like, if I can have a ceasefire, then once my people come for me, I can look at getting y'all off this moon and we can relocate you on different planets on other sides of the star system if need be. But we can only do that if there's a ceasefire and this fighting stops. And of course, they're like, there's no way the other leader is going to do that. But I'll try.
Yeah, he seems like, I'm on board for that. That sounds great. Like, he seems genuinely interested, but does not believe that the Null will cooperate or believe him.
Another quick cutscene to the roundabout. They're trying to find a needle in a haystack. And what do you need to find a needle in a haystack? You get a magnet. And so Miles is tinkering and finagling and making some kind of magnet on the runabout to find them.
Yet, maybe this is the stuff that you could have cut to have more Kira time?
Yes.
It's fun. You get some Dax O'Brien interaction, which you don't get a lot of.
Mm-hmm.
They're all, one's a scientist, one's an engineer, so you get both their expertise together, like solving problems, trick problems. So like it's fun, but it's not consequential to anything.
Yeah.
I guess
Especially when we have a lot more going on.
Yeah, I think. I'm trying to think of how you would have, because you obviously want to show why the rescue is taking the time that it is, but there's probably a simpler way of doing that, so you could just focus on your story. Because they cut them in several scenes, trying to like explore these different ways of detecting them and trying to figure out where they are and all this stuff, and probably not the most important thing to be focusing on.
No. All right. Go back to our moon. They've agreed to meet in a neutral location.
Oh, and parallel to this, Bashir, this is important, Bashir is at the crashed runabout trying to hijack the computer, get that up and running again.
Yes, because he wants to know more like, how are these people coming back to life?
Yeah, how does this work exactly? So he's going to run a full analysis, but he needs a computer to do that. So he's been like tinkering with the ship and getting that.
He just wants to create his own zombies, let's be real.
Yeah.
So they're going to meet in a neutral location, which they decided is the crashed runabout where Bashir is.
Very convenient.
So, as...
I like how they say we'll meet at a neutral site near your vessel, and it is quite literally right
right next to it. It's right next to it.
Very small moon.
So, as they're heading to this meeting, Kai and Kira are left behind, and they have their heart-to-heart. Kira is trying to justify herself because she is afraid of how the Kai sees her. And the Kai asks, like, how do you think I view you? And Kira says, I'm afraid you think I enjoy this violence. I don't. This has just been my whole life since I was a child. And the Kai does the ear touchy thing. I'm not sure what happens, but something happens. I don't know if she shows her something or like emotion arises in Kira, but it's apparently something that is really moves Kira. I wonder if she shows Kira how she sees her.
Possibly. It could also just be as simple as, a calming touch on someone who's getting wound up, and it makes them realize, like, she's basically just, interrogating her. Well, how do you see yourself? Don't you see yourself in these people? Where is this coming from? Who are you? And Kira's like, well, I'm not this. I'm not the violence. That isn't me. But she's clearly scared that it is. And she's trying to just deny it rather than face it. And ultimately, that's what the Kai says is, after she has whatever the ear thing accomplishes,
they never tell us what happens. It just, something does.
Something breaks in her. And Alpaca says, don't deny the violence inside of you. Only when you accept it can you move beyond it.
And Kira says something that actually broke my heart, where she doesn't regret what she does, but she said, I'm afraid the prophets won't forgive me. And that is also both sides of her. Yes, she was the resistance. She was a rebel fighting for her people, but she's also deeply religious. And so if you're a deeply religious person, I can see how those two sides might have a hard time coming together. And even though even if she knows in her heart what she did was right, she did a lot of awful things to get to those ends. And it might be scary. What if the prophets don't forgive me?
Yep. And that's why, clearly, since we spent the most time talking about, this is the most interesting part.
Yes.
The main plot is interesting in the way it relates to this, because they are the example. It's interesting that they set them up here as an example to their people, and they're serving as an example to Kira as well. And Alpaca is able to use that, have her confront these sides of her. So that's like the interesting part of this episode, and why it has a lot more going on than, say, previous episodes we talked about, despite being of perhaps similar quality levels.
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot more going on here. What happens when you don't end your war? But the war did end. The war ended.
Yeah.
But there's some piece of her mind, it didn't end. she's still fighting. She's still justifying herself and what she did. Like, it's PTSD. The war never ended.
Which is interesting because they're stuck on a planet where the war literally has never ended.
Yes.
And now you have someone where the war physically ended, but emotionally did not.
There's a lot going on in this episode. I just think the execution wasn't strong.
That's basically what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I think that's why I liked it a lot more than the previous episode. It's deeper. There's more there.
They're trying to do something here.
They're trying. And as we've already talked about, if they had just focused on that, they could have made a pretty good episode.
I think they could. This could have been a very strong episode.
Yeah. Right now, we gotta mine for our gold here.
I know. We're panning. We're panning for those tiny little itty bitties.
All right, so
go back to our runabout. They have located the moon that they have crashed on.
Yeah. Again, this is an example. Like, we had this great scene between them, and let's do more of that. I don't care about them. The probes finding the moons.
There has to have been some way they could have streamlined that. Okay. So yeah,
maybe they just didn't want to stay in that cave set any longer.
We go back for this meeting. But before we get into the meeting itself, I love this moment between Sisko and Bashir where Sisko explains to him like what we can do. We can get you out of this place. And Bashir's like, oh, so it's gonna be like a jailbreak. Sisko's like, don't you talk to me about the Prime Directive. And Bashir's like, I'm sorry, Daddy.
Just the way when he first shows up, because Bashir's been buried in this runabout this whole time. So he gets getting up to speed. He's like, oh yeah, hey, what's going on here? Talks about a ceasefire. Oh, no kidding. Just is very like,
Sisko's like, they've been punished enough. And I'm going to talk sense into them. We're going to get this ceasefire and get them off this mood. And Bashir's like, it's okay. I was just joking. I thought, sorry.
I'll go back in my runabout.
Exactly. Can I leave now?
All right, so now we got Zlenko, leader of the Knoll. Zlenko.
And it goes how you think it goes.
Yeah, he doesn't believe Deannis. He thinks that lure us all out into the open.
What if it is a trap and you die? Who cares? Take a chance, my dude. And this is where I wrote first. Maybe they haven't learned their lesson. They've literally been this hell of a purgatory for who knows how long. And they haven't learned their lesson. And this is where I started getting the little bits in my brain of, should they be able to leave?
Yeah, because he even tries to appeal to, like, their men. Like, instead of trying to appeal to them, he appeals to their men. Like, hey, if you guys have had enough of this, make them listen.
Yes.
And
he gets them, it looks like for a second. Like,
and the Jonathan Banks character, and I think this is the key part, because he seemed very on board with this plan. He seems like he's being genuine, and then this Knoll guy is being too paranoid and suspicious.
Yeah.
But ultimately, when the Knoll guy calls him out on this, no, you're just trying to lure us all out here so you can get us all at once. He admits it. He literally says, you think I would allow a single Knoll to escape this moon alive? And you're like, oh, the guy was right. He was just playing him. He was not actually serious about this plan. He was just trying to get them all out in the open.
Like these dumbass.
So that, I think, is like, oh, even it's not just a matter of the one side. Yeah, you're right. Neither of them, this one is clear that neither of them were serious about it.
Yep. So then the fight breaks out, and there's a moment where Sisko's about to get hit, and Bashir runs his little legs and dives and hits Sisko out of the way before some kind of weapon, but he would have died, is what would have happened. And Bashir's like, we can't afford to die here. And it's like, oh, mysterious.
Dun, dun, dun. Now again, we cut back to the runabout.
They pretty much are running into the same satellite system.
We got to get past it. Okay, it's like, okay, again, fun, not like a bad scene. Just it's taking time away from.
Let me get back. Yeah. Back to the moon. This is where we find out from Bashir. After you die, you cannot leave because whatever biomechanical thing that happens to bring you back to life is dependent on this moon. So as soon as, I guess, you go past those satellites,
You
you're
did.
dead. You're dead.
The nanobots were designed to stop functioning if they left the moon.
So if they are now dependent on this moon and can't leave, sucks for the Kai. She can't leave.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's the thing. The Kai is now stuck here.
she
Forever.
seems to be A-okay with this. She's on board. She's like, it's almost like she knew, I have to stay here. She's a long road ahead of her because these people need to heal. They need to find peace. And this can also be Kira's beginning to find her healing as well. Kira has to leave here deciding, am I going to continue being in this war in my mind, or am I going to start to heal? Such a great moment. I just wish it hit more, you know?
Yeah.
Because talking about it's hitting me.
Right?
But watching it, I'm like, okay, that's cool.
And I'll admit, in a couple of these, just because I'm like Gus and Psych, a sympathetic crier. You know, when they were having some of their moments, I was choking up a little bit because like the goods are there.
Mm-hmm.
I just wish it had been a fully cathartic experience that you could have with them.
I think we could have gotten there.
Yeah.
Quick bebop back to
Cut
that
back to their
runabout.
they're like gonna lure one of the satellites out by shooting a probe at it.
Pretty much they're ready.
Pokes
to
a
beam
hole
them.
in the field, and
yeah,
they're gonna beam.
They're ready to beam the crew back, and this is where they find out. Yeah, the Kai's not getting beamed back, and Sisko's like, I'll explain the story after the credits.
Like, can you repeat that? You said the Kai is not coming back? Yeah, it's not going to work for us.
This hit for me, though, when they get back to the moon, because Bashir's like, he's talking to Sisko going, you know how much I value life, but I think these people been through enough, they've been punished enough, there needs to be an end. I can reprogram some things where I'm guessing like the next time they die for realsies.
Yeah, he's like, okay. he thinks he can disable it so they can finally just, okay, we can't save them. Maybe we can just end their suffering.
And at first the leader, Jonathan Banks, like, yeah, like an end? We could die? Like, that's major. You have to do that. You have to do that. And at first, like, first I was like,
he's pleading.
He's pleading. I'm like, yes.
I'm so sorry.
Give him a peaceful end, please. Let him take him out of the suffering. And he goes, and I will use that to finally destroy my enemy.
Finally kill the Knoll once and for all. The ultimate weapon.
And
oh no.
You see it especially on Bashir's face. Like the wind almost like gets sucked out of it. Like he just deflates. I thought this was a good moment for the actor where immediately when the leader said this line, his whole demeanor changed. Because we did too. I was like, oh. And that solidified for me the thought I had earlier of maybe they haven't learned their lesson.
Yep.
It's interesting because the sad thing should be, oh, they're going to die. But actually now the sad thing is they're going to live.
Mm-hmm.
And as they're going and getting beamed up, the leader's screaming, I'm like, no, you have to do this. You can't leave. We have to destroy them. Like, he's in a rage, pretty much, because now they refuse to. And they don't even say anything. They just walk over to where they're going to be beamed, looking so sad and defeated.
And at that moment, another attack starts, and they run off to go fight, and the cycle continues.
And Kai looks over and goes, man, I have my work cut out for me. And that's the end.
Mm-hmm.
So that moment hit more for me than the Kira moment when watching it. As we're talking about it.
Because at least, because this was the one advantage, right, of this being a story is that moment gets hit. Because it's the thing we've been paying attention to. Yeah,
I wish they could have.
I think you could have done both.
Up.
Yeah.
I think you could have done both. Beef up.
Because they do relate to each other.
I'm sorry,
but it feels like
Jackson
such an
Miles.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, guys.
We have to let you go.
You'll get your chance.
You'll get another episode, though. I promise. Just not this one.
Any other final thoughts? We sort of talked about it as we went, but
No, I definitely better than Vortex.
just a missed opportunity.
It's like better than Vortex, but below the Nagus. It's like right in the middle for me.
Yeah.
Where the Nagus did those things, and I feel like really hit its themes, really solid, came together. This could have, because both, it seems like these two plots have nothing to do with each other, but they actually have a lot to do with each other. And I wished, as we were experiencing this episode, that unfolded more for us.
Yeah.
So.
Instead of being limited to like a couple scenes that were started and then we're done with.
But in the end, I'm glad I revisited this. I appreciate it more than the first time. Because, it's like, oh, that's just where the guy got left behind. Whoa, oh, man. Deep Space Nine really fucked up this one.
Yeah, I like to see them explain this when they got back.
I'm kind of sad we didn't see that in the episode.
Another scene stolen from us.
So, solid.
Yeah.
Oh, do you have any thoughts before we go next week?
No, yeah, I think pretty much covers it.
What we got for next week?
Next week we have the storyteller. I am pretty sure this one's a doozy.
Oh boy.
But it has its moments. You know what? This is a decent O'Brien Bashir one. This is like the proto Bashir O'Brien episode.
We're finally getting our the startings of our bromance?
Yes, that might hold us over.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, because even if the episode is shit, I bet we'll have tons of Miles and Bashir. Goodness.
To give us life.
Yes, it does. All right.
Well, thanks for tuning in and join us next week for The Storyteller.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.